Hi, welcome back. In this demo, we're going to talk about Microsoft Forms. We're going to take a look at the interface to Microsoft Forms, give you a quick overview of how the application itself works. Then we'll dive into a couple of examples. We're gonna create a form and a quiz in Microsoft Forms, give you a feel for how you create something and what you can create in this application. Uh, After that, we'll take a look at how you share your form. Once you create a quiz or a form, how do you get it out to the public and get some responses or collaborate on building your form? And then we'll look at working with those responses after you've collected data. What do you do with it? How do you look at it, summarize it, those sorts of things, and we'll wrap up with how does Forms integrate with Microsoft Teams. Teams being the collaboration tool that everyone seems to prefer these days, and it does support using forms within its interface. And we'll take a look at how you add some tabs and show your forms in there in a variety of different ways. Right now, I've just logged into my Office 365 account. I went to portal.office.com, logged in with my credentials, entered the password, and now I'm presented with my screen of applications and recent documents. And if yours should be similar to mine. And as you can see, there's a link on the home for the Forms application. So this is one of the ways that you can open Forms is right from the portal. Another way is from the waffle menu. If you open the waffle menu, say you're in Outlook or somewhere else, you can open the waffle menu and get to your All apps, which will also show you the link to Forms to open it there. Or you can just type in the link into your browser at forms.office.com um, to open your Forms. And when you open Forms for the first time, you'll probably get an introductory splash screen that gives you a little couple of hints and lets you do something. We're not gonna take a look at that. What we're really going to focus on today is the application and the three tabs of this application that you will be most interested in. As you can see across the top, we have a tab for My Forms, Shared with Me, and Group Forms. All three are very similar, but they perform a little bit different thing. You initially start the Forms application looking at My Forms, and these are the forms that I have created under my own account. I'm listed as the owner of each of these forms, and you can see I've created two forms that are mine. And the thing about your own individual forms is no one can see those until you've shared them, until you provide some access to these forms. No one else automatically sees them. These are unique to you. They're under your account. Shared with Me is very similar. These are the forms that someone else has created, and they've shared them with you in a collaborative way. And so I am not the owner of this form, someone else is, and you can see the little blue icon that indicates that someone else owns a form. So someone else created it under their own individual account and then shared it with me in a collaborative way. And I can at this point I can go in because it's been shared with me. I can copy it or I can edit this form in a collaborative way with that other person, and I'm editing that person's form, not editing my own. And the last section are group forms. Group forms are a little bit different. They're forms that I create or that other people have created within my group. You will be a member of a number of different groups. If you use Microsoft Teams, you can consider each team as a group that you've been added to. If you're familiar with distribution groups in Outlook, those are groups as well that you may be a member of. And so as a member, you can see forms that have been created under the ownership of that group, as well as everyone else in that group can see and edit those forms. When you look at this tab, you're first met with the list of recent group forms. And these are the ones that I have accessed recently through a variety of groups. You can see under these two that are listed here that they're both under a group called Python Users Group. That's an example group that I use frequently in my demos. But I can use the drop-down box to take a look at all the other groups that I'm a member of. and this little drop down shows me these are all my groups, and it tells me how many forms are in those groups. If I switch to one of those groups, and let's say here's the Python user group, I can see all of the group forms that are associated with that group, as well as I can create new forms and quizzes for that group. Um, so, and you can see a little bit of information about the group as well, telling you whether it's a private or public group. That might help you to understand who may have access to these forms, who may not. But overall, that's really the primary interface that you're going to be interested in with forms. Uh, what we'll do now is to familiarize yourself with the construction interface. We're going to go ahead and dive in and create a form. We're going to create both a form and a quiz, because while they're basically the same thing, the quiz brings a couple of little things to the table that you might be interested in. They'll help you out a different way. So in my use case here, that where I'm going to just demo these two things. I'm going to prepare to create a new group, a SharePoint users group. I've already got a Python users group out here. I'm gonna create a SharePoint users group in Teams at some point, but right now I'm creating a couple forms for that users group. And the first form I want to create is a membership form. I want to have people fill out a membership form to join the group, and then I'm gonna create a quiz for a training session that I'm putting together. So right now I'm going to create both of these, this form and the quiz, as an individual form. They're going to be under my ownership, but later on I will move them over to the group. I'll copy them into the group, and they will become group-owned forms. But for now, we're going to look at the individuals. So what is a form? A form is really kind of a survey. When you're looking at the basic form, you ask a series of questions and you collect data on those questions. And so this one is our membership information form. And I'm going to be kind of boring, and I'm going to call it exactly that, information form. And I'm going to type in a description, and this is a description everyone will see when the form is shared with them. That way they know what the form is and what it's done. And I'm just going to say, enter your information to join the SharePoint users group. Okay. As you can see, we have an icon off to the side here that allows us to insert an image. And this is, I can either upload an image, I can pull it off my OneDrive, or I can do a Bing search. So I can do something like membership. Oh, you can see, look, I got a neat little picture here off of Bing. You have to be careful with copyrights. I guess I'm obligated to say that here, but as you can see, I'll just add this somewhat questionably copyrighted material into my form for demo purposes. And you can see it's taking a little bit of time to spin up there. It's doing a download and adding it. So we'll go ahead and press on while that image is doing its thing. When you create questions for your forms or your quizzes, there's quite a few types that you can use. You can add choices, text, ratings, date, and the drop-down gives you access to more. You can use Likert scales, net promoter scores. Net promoter score is very similar to a Likert scale. The Likert scale is those old, I'm sure you're familiar with them in old surveys, where you have the least likely to most likely options, and there's either 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 that you select from a grid of things. Well, the net promoter score is basically the same thing, saying how likely are you to recommend this to blah blah blah. So these two are very similar in nature. They're just formatted slightly different. As you can see, if you highlight over each one, it does. Some of them do give you some help text on these, but for the most part, they're pretty self-explanatory. So for this one, we're gonna make a simple one here. We're gonna ask, what is your name? Get some basic information. You can, as you can see, we can set it whether it's required or not. We can put some restrictions on it, subtitles, quite a few different things here. Restrictions are kind of like formatting things. If say if say you wanted to, name's a bad example where you would put a restriction, but perhaps if you were asking for some values like 1 to 10 or something like that. So we'll quickly throw in some of our next questions that you'll see here. When you add questions to your survey, forms will pop up based on the title you give it and based on some of the other questions. It'll give you some suggestions, and you can quickly add them in. So one of the things I wanted to have is email, so I'll just go ahead and select the email there, do add selected, and voila, I get the email address put in here. Now you'll notice if I want that to be required, I still have to come in and edit and flip the required flag to say yes, you have to fill that in. But here we're going to come down, and now I want to know. I'm going to add a rating field because I'm going to ask, what is your SharePoint skill level? Now, there's a number of ways I could have done this question. I'm using this kind of numeric thing. I'll do a 1 to 5, but this is probably the most direct way to ask this question. It's a great way to look at how to use that rating field in here, and then I'm going to throw in another choice field that just kind of says, would you like to be a presenter? And this is going to be a simple yes, no. And as you can see, once again, it's suggesting options that I can throw into this questionnaire. Either I can click them, hit add all, and it fills in a lot of this for me. Makes it very, very handy. Very handy tool. And so here we go. This is all I'm going to fill in for this example form. But now I have a membership information form where people can fill this out and join my users group. So now when I go back to forms, you'll see I have my membership information form within the interface. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a quiz. Quiz is very much like a form. It's very much like what we just built. The difference is it's like a quiz from that you had in school all the time. We can put some point values and add some things. So I'm going to start out, and this quiz is on the basics of a SharePoint list. I'm going to say that in this particular use case or this example, I'm constructing a seminar on SharePoint, and I just want to have a quick quiz to make sure some things are the materials understood and everything. So I'm not going to put a much of a description here, but I'm going to go ahead and start adding questions to mine. And I'm going to start with a choice. And this one we're going to say, what is a SharePoint list? And my options are going to be this: place to hold documents, a place to, let's type that right, place to hold a list of links. I'm going to add another option, a place to hold metadata items. And then I'll do the old all of the above answer. Now, this is the correct answer. So you see, you come over here, you got check marks. I can either have a single correct answer, in the case of this one. I can also option it to have multiple answers. So this is where you can have the multiple correct answers, and it switches from the little radio button to the check boxes. I'm going to go back to just the check boxes. This one's marked as the correct answer. I'm going to give this a point value of 1. So, and we're going to set that to required. So to take this quiz, you have to answer this question. And if you get the answer correct, you get 1 point. Any other incorrect answer, you get 0 points. Just like your old elementary school quizzes. So next, we're going to add another choice field, and we're going to say which of these columns can be in a list. and this one we are going to go with the multiple choice option. Say you can have text, you can have hyperlinks, add an option, we can have pictures, right? And we can have numbers. Now in this case, every single one of these is correct. So it's good old-fashioned all of the above, but in this case you have to click all of them. Once again, it's a required question. We're going to just have 1 point if you get all these right. 0 if you miss any. Ooh, I would have been a harsh teacher. And then the last one, let's see, I'll just do another question, another choice question. This one will be a simple yes, no. And can you attach documents to, let me spell that correct, to a list item? Okay, so we're going to do yes. Oop, not what to do. Maybe that was the next step. So here we go. And yes is the correct answer. 1 point, and that's it. So there we go. We have our questionnaire, our quiz, and we've added point values. So it's a 3-point quiz. If you get a point for each correct answer and 0 points for the incorrect answers. And that is our quiz. Before I jump out to the sharing portion of this of our forms, I want to talk about sections in a form and how sections work. Because if you'll notice under here, you had the option for a section. A section is like, I like to think of it like pages in your form or a wizard. If you add a section, and I will call this section 2 in my quiz, and it's just an example so you can see how it works. Each section can have more questions in it, and you'll see it even kind of divides out. Section 1 looks like a page. You can start to work with the selections, duplicating, removing them, moving them around as you build them. Why a section is important is when someone is responding to this questionnaire. So I'm going to take a look at preview here so that you can see what I'm talking about. When someone's responding to the question, they see each section at a time followed by a next button. So they get the next and back buttons. Now, since I set all these as required, I do have to answer the questions before I can go to the next one. But see, I hit next, and you get the next page. You can go back and forth, and then when I submit, that's when the questionnaire is saved and goes on. So that's how sections work. So in this one, I'm going to remove the section in questions. That way, I can go back to my one single section quiz. One last thing I want to add to this demo to point out is you can add themes. There are some pre-installed themes that you can add to your quiz or form, and it just pretties up the background a bit. These come out of the box, they're default. There's not a lot of flexibility as far as what you can do with the themes at this point in time, but hopefully at some point we'll be able to create some branded themes, so to speak. So let's talk about sharing. We've created a quiz, we've created a membership form, and we want to be able to share those out there so that we can get some responses and have some people answer these questions. There's a number of ways. Sharing means 3 different things in forms. Sharing is sharing out the form so that you can collect responses. There's also sharing as a template where you can share your completed form with someone else. As you recall, I kind of showed that with the shared with me. You can share it out to someone else in a collaborative way. It allows someone to make a copy of your form or quiz so that they can use it for themselves. And then there's the share to collaborate, which is the ones where you get to edit someone else's form. So maybe you're working on a team, you're working with someone else, as a partner, uh, and you want to be able to edit and add some questions of your own, and you're working together to build a survey. So those are the three primary ways of sharing. And when you open up the share, you can see it's sectioned off in those three categories: send and collect responses, share as a template, share to collaborate. Um, so let's talk about some of the details on that. The one you'll probably spend the most of the time with is the send and collect responses type of sharing. And you have two options. Anyone with the link can respond. That means anyone in the world. That is a totally public form. Anyone who knows that hyperlink can go to this and enter in their information in this form, submit it, and you will get their responses. The interesting thing about this option is is what we would call the anonymous option. When people respond to this form, it does not collect their username or email. So when we look at the results, you'll see it listed as anonymous respondent. On the other hand, if you select only people in my organization can respond, it will collect the name and email address of the person that responded to the questionnaire, but that person also must be within the organization. That means they have to be a member of your Office 365 suite, that they have a license to your Office 365, and are part of your organization. So um, those two types give you some very different data within the responses, and allows you some control over who can get to your forms and quizzes. We have four ways of sharing this form. The first and obvious way is with the link itself. It gives you the whole link here. You can click the copy button and then paste it wherever you'd like, printed materials, email, whatnot. Um, Anyone can type that into the URL of a browser, and they will see the actual form itself. Another way is with a QR code. Once again, you can download this image. That way, you can put it into a web page or on printed material or whatnot. People can use their phones to scan that QR code, and it'll bring up this form in their browser and allow them to answer questions. The third option is a bit of HTML code. So if you're a developer or you're a site collection owner of a SharePoint site and you want to take that bit of HTML and put it into maybe an editor web part so that 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 little bit of HTML is in the page, then what happens is within that frame, that bit of HTML, your form will show up. So it's a way of putting the form into a web page that you might own or a SharePoint site. Then anyone who comes to that web page or that site can answer the content of your form. So very handy, especially if you're using the anonymous option where anyone can respond. Then you put it on a public web page, and people can just fill it out. And then the last one is email, which will, as you can see in my screen here, it pops up your email client that mine is not set up. But it pops up the email client where it'll email the link to share your form with other people. Now, all four of these options are once again to send and collect responses. When someone gets that link, what they see is this. They see this view of the form where they don't get to edit the form. They're just simply filling out the answers and submitting the result of that form to you. And that is the way in which you can collect your information. Sharing as a template is a little bit different. As you can see, it doesn't give you an option as to who gets it. This is definitely anyone with the link, uh, and that's this link here. Anyone who has that link can copy your form, and it is a copy. Uh, just by having that link, that does not allow them to edit your form. It also does not allow them to view the results of your form. It is only giving them a copy. So this is a situation where your friend goes, "Oh, I wish I could use that form for my users group," and maybe they're doing some other users group, a WordPress users group, and they just want to go through here and edit out SharePoint, make it say WordPress, and they want to use all of my materials. This allows them to make a copy of this form. and that's it. And then when they edit that form, it becomes their own form, and I don't see what they did with it. They don't see what I do with my form. It's just it's as it says, it's a template, it's a copy. Share to collaborate works a little bit different though, because now anyone with this link will edit my form. They're accessing my form to work with me in a collaborative way. Uh, and I do have a couple of options here that will let me limit who can collaborate on this form with me. And the default option is anyone with an Office 365 account. That's not just my organization, that's other organizations. So, for example, my daughter at her college, they use Office 365. So, since she has a valid Office 365 account, I could share this link with her and she could collaborate on this form with me as well, and make changes to the form and look at the responses, those sorts of things. The second option, though, that limits to people just in my organization. So in this with this option, even if my daughter had the link, she would not be able to edit this form because she's not in my organization. She's in her school's organization. So very different, a couple of little different controls here as to who can collaborate with you, and you decide which one's appropriate for your usage. And so those are the three options for sharing the form. Um, Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out here and I'm going to share. Once again, I've got this anonymous. I'm going to copy this link, and I am going to bring up Microsoft Chrome. And why am I doing this? Because I want to show you how responses work, but on our two forms we have no responses. Uh, so I'm going to put in just a couple of quick ones here. See, I'm going to do a submit, and you can see what it looks like. With a form, I can submit another response. And I'm just going to do a couple here, just so we have something to view. I'm also going to go back here and I'm going to do my quiz and share it. Make it anyone copy, go back to Chrome, and we will just put a couple of responses to our questionnaire. We're going to do some correct and incorrect. So now you'll notice with a quiz, the person that fills it out can view their own results, so they know right away what they messed up on. So let's see, I'm going to do one that's got all the answers correct, and then we'll just do another with some. So there we go. That's good enough for our response, for our purposes. So now I'm back, and I want to talk to you about responses to the questionnaire and how you can look at the data that has come back to you. So we're going to look at the membership form, and as you can see, as the owner of the form, you have a tab that shows responses. And for forms, you get a little bit of metadata about it. I know that I've got two responses. It shows me how long it took people to fill it out. If that's relevant, it may not be useful information to you, and it tells me whether the form is accepting results or not right now. So some basic high level information, and at the high level, it gives me all the responses that have been filled out so far. And as you can see, these are summaries. So like my question about this skill level, it's telling me the average. It's not giving me the individual one. So the way I've set up this form, it's probably more useful to me to look at the individual answers rather than see the aggregate of the answers. But that's this top level page really is to just show me the basic statistics and aggregation of information from this form. I also have the option from here to kind of reset the forms. This is deleting all the response that gets rid of all the data and lets me reuse the form. Maybe I have certain open windows in which I accept new members to my group, and so each time I open a new window, I want to get rid of the old ones and see only the new people, whatever. There's a lot of different ways that you might want to do this. I can also print a summary or create a summary link. And this link here is, in a way, it's sharing these results. This summary link, I get a URL, I copy it, I can give it to someone else, and they can bring up this page too and look at this aggregate information. So maybe maybe it's my boss that wants to look at this information, and my boss doesn't have access to the form itself. That's a way to share that aggregate data. I can also export my data into Excel. And this can be very useful for forms that collect a lot of information or where you're dealing with a lot of responses. In this case, it also lets me look at the individual uh, questions in a more detailed way. But being that this information is in Excel, I can use that as my bridge to something like Power BI, in which I could create a dashboard to summarize this information. Maybe I want more detailed analytics or charting than what the basic aggregate here shows. I can use Power BI to give me a great deal more detail when I have large quantities of data and want to slice and dice it in a very different way. Um, so that's working with results. Pretty straightforward. You can do quite a few things here. You just have to remember when it comes to these forms, the responses are available to anyone that has permissions to the form. So when we talk about my individual forms, I'm the only one that can see those responses and the results of those responses unless I actually share out that link. But if I'm talking about a group form, anyone in the group can see that information. So this is something that is kind of important to remember as you're thinking about the data that you collect from these forms and quizzes. As you need to think about who can see that information, and that's the differentiation between my forms and group forms becomes very important. Let's look at the quizzes. The quizzes are a little bit different. Once again, we have the aggregate information at the top. It tells me what people answered. With a quiz, this is somewhat limited information as far as limited in value. The top might be helpful, telling me how many people answered and what their average score was. Once again, I can reset, I can print summaries, do those things. What is really interesting about a quiz is the post scores option. This is showing each individual person that responded to it and what they scored. Uh, so if I was as you can see, we had it set up as anonymous, so I didn't collect any name information. It's only showing up as anonymous users. If I had chosen to share with only people in my organization, then I would have a name and email beside this. It would say the name of each person and how they scored. So you can imagine if you're in a classroom setting or something like that, that might be something that you want to do is to have the names and post scores. You can also export this to Excel as well and review the answers in a more detailed way. You can look at how did respondent one answer the questions, respondent two, respondent three. So So very similar between how the responses appear in forms and quizzes, but quizzes being the very nature of what they are, those responses work a little bit differently. So that's forms. We've went over the interface. We made a form and a quiz as an example to show you how each one works. We've talked about group forms versus my forms. We've shared these. We've looked at some of the responses. The last thing I wanted to do in this session was to look at Microsoft Teams. And how Forms integrates there. So I'm gonna open up my Teams interface. I'm using the waffle menu to open Teams, and I'm going to go into my Python users group team that I use as a demo since I've not created my SharePoint one yet. And you'll see I default. It's my first team, so it's the one that comes up. And what I want to do here in this team is I'm gonna add some of those forms that I've already uh, created for the Python users group. see right at the top, Forms is an option to add as a tab, and it comes in as a tab. And you can see I've got a couple of options. I can create a shared form. If I type in a name here, I'm creating a brand new form, and it'll create a tab in my team in the collaboration view. So that means I'm editing the form where I can, and anyone else in this team that sees that tab can also go in and edit that form. So this is a new form. This isn't one that I created in Forms. This is kind of a window to the Forms interface. And let me just uh, show you that as an example so you can see what I mean. So I just give it a name. So, and I am now creating a brand new group form. So this form is a group form. It's not owned by me. It's owned by the Python users group. Everyone that's a member of this group can play with this form, and you can see I can add questions. I can do all the work. I can view the responses. I can share from here. So this is a way of creating forms within Teams that's almost identical to doing it within the Forms interface. You'll see there are some differences. The theme part has not been the new themes have not been propagated to this interface, but it works the same way. Sometimes though, I don't want to have a form in edit mode, or I want to get a form that already exists, um, rather than create a brand new one. So the other option within the Forms selection is an existing form. And you'll see here what's shown are all of my personal, so these are my individual forms um, that are owned by me, that are created by me. So you can see I've got my Python ones, but I've also got my SharePoint ones here as well. And then I also get the list of forms that are already in part of this Python users group. So if it says personal, these are the ones that I own. If it doesn't say anything, it doesn't have some parentheses, these are the ones that the group owns. Now, subtle difference between these. If I choose one of my personal forms, my options down here are either to collect responses, in which case the tab will show it in, in the answer view, um, or I can show the results of that uh, of that form. If it's a group-owned form, though, I can collect response, show results, but I can also go and collaborate. And that's this edit mode that I've showed you already. So subtle difference there between whether it's my own form or whether it's a group form as to what you can show as a tab. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do this intro to Python. This is a quiz, and I'm going to I'm going to do it in collect responses mode. And when I save that, you'll see I get another tab in my team, and it's showing. See, now I can answer the questions on this quiz and submit them um, to get responses. So that's one way I can get responses to my quizzes. I can also add the tab to show the same form, but I'm going to show it in show results. So now anyone in this group can see the results of that questionnaire and see, once again, it's the summary, and you'll notice you can't see the individuals. There's no posting to see what individual people answered. It's really just showing the aggregate of information. But each of these are tabs. And so we've got the one tab that is response view, collect responses. We've got a tab that is the results view to show the aggregate of the results for that form. And then the third view is the collaborate view. And that's how Forms integrates with Teams. So you can have any number of different forms, a number of different ways of looking at each form within the Microsoft Teams interface. It's a very handy way of working with Forms and integrating it here. Forms does integrate with some of the other Microsoft products, but as I do those demos, for example, in Stream, when you have a video, you can insert Forms into your videos. During that demo, I'll show you how to do that. We'll come back and view Forms again. When we talk about flow and how you can build customized workflows or aggregate information, send information from your form somewhere else. We'll do that within the Forms interface. A little more complicated there, but this demo is really to get you familiar with the foundations of Microsoft Forms. So definitely go out there, play with it, get familiar with the interface, because in some of our other applications and future demos, we will use the content of this demo and show you some really nifty things that you can do with forms. So once again, thank you for taking the time to view my demo, like and subscribe as always. And I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you.